Hello everyone, this is part 34 of What If Naruto was in the 7 Ninja Swordsman, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. One day later, Mountain's graveyard. Madara stood in the center of a large room surrounded by a handful of his trusted commanders in the form of Inoue Namikaze, Nagato Uzumaki, Reika Uzumaki and Kasumi Uzumaki. For once the fiery and powerful redheads and the shrewd Azukage looked somber than ever before. Maizetsu Spies reports that the Rock Brigade is shattered. Out of the 100,000 who marched in that force, less than 20,000 remain and not in the best shape or morale. The rest are injured or have fled. With the Amekage and Takikage and most of their fighters wounded or routed, those two nations have pulled out of this war. While Onoki survived, most of his shinobi and he has barely managed to gather the survivors, most being feudal warriors from the Earth Daimyo. It is a devastating blow for the Alliance. They have lost half of the total army alongside two cages, crucial supplies, their only airborne troops in the form of a Wagakure's bomber squadron and their most needed mountain warfare specialists in the form of a Wagakure shinobi who would have been crucial to wage war in the mountain's graveyard. It is a stunning victory, explained Madara honestly. At what cost? Asked Inoue Namikaze bitterly, making the Uchiha sigh but give a sad nod. We barely had 110,000 Zetsu in our ranks. More than 20,000 of them are or incapacitated. Few Spartans are injured but they will recover shortly. However, Kushina and Naruto are in critical condition. One of our most capable officers and the leader of this army, pointed Nagato. How are they now? I can bring them back to life if they with my Rinnegan, promised Madara, earning a frustrated growl from Kasumi Uzumaki. That isn't the case. They hang between life and death. Kushina might survive. But Naruto has lost both his eyes and is in a coma. None of our medical ninjutsu have been of use. We can K them and resurrect them once again, proposed the lone Zetsu in the room. The creature regretted those words when every warrior from Uzushiogakure nearly drew their swords on him until abruptly halted by their cage Inoue Namikaze. That might work with Kushina. But may just really K Naruto for good, she whispered sadly. How is he? Asked Madara worriedly. His wounds are healing, albeit very slowly. However, he is nearly brain-s. If not for his chakra armor, he would have been turned to ash. He hangs between a place of life and death, not so alive but not either, explained the second Azukage in an extremely tired voice. Without Naruto, we are lost, whispered Reika Uzumaki, despair evident on her broken face. The Leaf Brigade marches on us with 120,000 strong army led by the Senju brothers and the samurai. They'll have many Edo Tensei of powerful warriors in their ranks. With 10,000 Zetsus engaged in Naruto's covert mission with Ino, we barely have 80,000 Zetsu and the Spartans, our finest general is gone, reported the lone Zetsu somberly. Onoki and his 20,000 strong forces will join them for whatever it's worth, making our odds even worse. Madara saw Inoue Namikaze step forward and look at her subdued clansman with a fire in her eyes. Then I will assume command as Naruto had ordered. We have paid a heavy price, but we have not lost yet. We will deploy our own special reserves and launch everything we have at the enemy. We must hold them for 5 more days and then victory shall be ours. Promised Inoue fiercely. I'll come with you too. None of you shall survive for that long without my help. Assured Madara. No, you are needed here. You are the key to our plan, Naruto knew that. We are expendable, you are not. I'll leave a reserve of 30,000 Zetsu with you at this base and take the rest 50,000 and the Spartans into battle with me. It is most likely we will never see each other again, and yet you must see this through to the end for all of us, Madara Uchiha, explained Inoue honestly. What kind of a federation will I build if all my comrades are asked Madara defeatedly. You can bring us back to life, like you did before. I imagine the power of all tailed beasts will give you strength equal if not greater than the Sage of 6 Paths himself. My son believed in you and this dream of a united humanity, RB is a small price for that. We are not doing this for you or the mission alone, said Inoue sincerely. For Naruto. Everyone in the room was surprised by those words, said none other than the lone Zetsu himself. As he watched their astonished gazes staring at him, the creature lowered his head. We heard of what the marshal did for our brothers. He could have left the wounded Zetsus to save his Spartans, but he stood his ground at great cost. So did all of you Spartans, even if it meant losing your leader and a close friend. No one has ever done that for us, confessed the Zetsu hesitantly. Madara felt guilty for a long moment as he remembered using these creatures recklessly in the past to achieve his dreams. Compared to his actions, the warriors of Azu had stood side by side and risked their lives to protect the Zetsus. It came as no surprise when the creature knelt not in front of him with respect, but towards the second Azukage. We Zetsus shall fight by your side to the very end. Inoue gave a respectful nod as she glanced at her comrades who looked at her with a cold determination in their eyes. The Terrain Federation will fight to the last warrior. Azu Shiogakur. Hanzo Uzumaki, the former disgraced leader of Azu, had assumed temporary command of his nation's defense after it had been dragged into an unwanted war. With their second Azukage Inoue Namikaze off to war alongside their finest warriors the Spartans, it was up to him to defend their island nation with the small but loyal army of Uzumaki clansmen. But as he stood upon one of the mountains alongside their army overlooking the vast but beautiful sea ahead of him, he could feel nothing but regret. For it was his actions that had brought doom upon their island. The men are ready, Lord Hanzo, reported Captain Daisuke, his second in command. With Hanzo's protege Reika Uzumaki fighting alongside their cage, Daisuke was the senior-most veteran he had left under his command. A shinobi who had seen enough of war, not extremely powerful but a good commander. Tell me, Daisuke, have you ever gone on a sail with your son? Asked Hanzo solemnly, earning a wistful shake of the head from the younger Uzumaki. No, never. A shinobi's life is all I've had the honor to know, answered Daisuke truthfully, with a hint of regret present in his voice. I would have liked to have gone on a sail with my son, thought Hanzo, as he saw the end marching towards their shores. Why don't you hand me over, Captain? It was my actions that brought this catastrophe to our doorstep, said Hanzo regretfully. Daisuke Uzumaki watched the largest fleet in the world marching towards his homeland with the flag of Kirigakure flying proudly upon every vessel. Now that Naruto's truth had been exposed as an Azu spy who infiltrated their land, they were here to deliver retribution. True, it was all done upon Hanzo's orders, but the former Kage was being naive if he thought these fighters would stop if they handed him over to face justice. More Uzumaki do not need to for my mistakes, requested Hanzo sadly. I'm afraid it will not be enough to stop the desire for vengeance. For better or worse, you are more useful to us alive in the upcoming battle. But there is another reason as to why the 4,000 Uzumaki standing behind me will not abandon you, answered Daisuke honestly. The former Kage looked behind to see the 4,000-strong army of Uzumaki fighters look determined to defend their homeland to the bitter end. What is that? Asked Hanzo curiously, receiving a determined look from his commander. You are one of us and we will never abandon our own again. Not after what was done to the Spartans in the past. Your crimes will face justice at the hands of your own people once this war is over, that is if we survive. We are a small nation with moderate strength, it is very likely we may become history by the end of this conflict. If this is to be our end, we will stay true to our clan's words to the bitter end, promised Daisuke fiercely. Family, duty, honor. Hanzo's eyes widened upon hearing Daisuke's promise and the roar of their clan's words by their entire army in unison upon hearing that. Tears arrived in the older man's eyes as he was once again reminded of his mistakes. All his life he had sought power at all costs, thinking it was necessary to protect his homeland and his own rule considering the numerous disadvantages it faced against the great nations. All the while ignoring its true strength. His people. He could not help but remember Yahiko, Inoue, Nagato, the Spartans, so many other ninjas and even Naruto Namikaze. Even his own son. They gave up everything, their happiness, their honor, their families and even their lives and dreams to protect this island and their clan. When he looked back at their army, he saw the same determination and loyalty in every shinobi. This had always been their real strength, one that no great nation, no Kage, no army had ever been able to beat no matter how hard they tried. Daisuke was relieved when he saw a fearsome determination reborn in their former Kage's eyes as he finally stepped out of the shame he felt and stood before them proudly. Thank you, Captain, for reminding me of what I had lost sight of once again, said Hanzo respectfully. If I could be allowed one regret, then it would be that we could not aid our Spartans and Minato when they need us so desperately once more, whispered Daisuke sadly. The enemy at our doorstep is a hard but necessary reason why they asked us to preserve our strength to defend our nation in such an eventuality. It is a bitter reality, said Hanzo honestly. Then let us meet our fate, Lord Hanzo, agreed Captain Daisuke. As the veterans steeled themselves, they were quite surprised when in a few moments the Kirigakure navy stopped its advance at a respectable distance from Azu's shores with only a lone ship moving forward under a banner of a peaceful flag. What are they doing? Asked Daisuke confusedly. Hanzo Uzumaki sensed very powerful chakra signatures upon that vessel and an inexplicable hope blossomed within his heart as he looked at his commander hopefully. Let's go find out. As the first Azukage and his commander descended down the mountains with a small honor guard alongside them, they saw 6 figures jump out of the approaching Kirigakure ship. As they got closer, Hanzo and the rest of the Uzumaki were quite surprised to see they were all members of the 7 ninja swordsmen led by Mangetsu Hozuki. The two groups met each other on the beach and looked at each other for a few long and tense moments. By all rights, I should be delivering justice upon your island for your actions, Lord Hanzo, said Mangetsu honestly. Isn't that why you brought this army in my home? Challenged the first Azukage fearlessly. Your actions ended up delivering a man who helped my nation achieve true greatness. So I'm actually here to thank you, joked Mangetsu, earning a smirk from some of the 7 ninja swordsmen. You brought 40,000 fighters all this way for a joke? Asked Daisuke Uzumaki sarcastically, clearly not believing the swordsmen. Are you the new Mizukage? Asked another Uzumaki shinobi. Hanzo was once again surprised when he saw an iron-clad determination arrive in Mangetsu Hozuki's eyes alongside every other member of the 7 ninja swordsmen. Kirigakure has a Mizukage and his name is Naruto Namikaze. Every Uzumaki including Hanzo looked shocked upon hearing those words and saw not an ounce of hesitation in any of Kirigakure's finest warriors. Mangetsu must have seen the disbelief upon the faces of the redhead clansmen as he took a confident step forward. We heard rumors that your nation was staying out of this war and sending only the 7 ninja swordsmen after Naruto, said Hanzo hesitantly. A mistake which will not be implemented. Naruto was not born in our nation, but he has fought and for its glory and safety more than most citizens of our land. He is still one of us, explained Mangetsu sincerely. Why? Asked Hanzo once again, earning a determined smile from the younger clan head. I know it defies all sense of self-preservation and Naruto's truth. But the people of Kirigakure are a bit like yours, loyal to their own. We remember how Naruto stood for us in our time of need, we love him regardless of his past and will risk everything for his sake. Which is why 40,000 Kirigakure warriors will march upon the mountain's graveyard to defend our cage. Declared Mangetsu proudly. Hanzo Uzumaki was left speechless. He glanced at the entire Kirigakure army assembled upon that massive fleet and the sight of the grim but determined 7 ninja swordsmen before him. He could not help but feel even more ashamed for these men and women were going to war and death for the sake of a man who was not even their countryman by birth. While he had abandoned his own so many times. This is our war, Lord Hanzo. The fate of our world depends in the battle that shall be fought in the mountain's graveyard. If we lose Naruto, we lose everything for we know what the allied shinobi nations will do to us all eventually if they win this war. Kirigakure shall answer its cage's call, we are here for your decision, said Mangetsu honestly, and looked straight into the older man's eyes. Hanzo Uzumaki looked at his clansmen and saw only one emotion present in their eyes. One which he shared wholeheartedly as he stepped forward to correct the mistakes of the past and to do what was right. Mangetsu offered him his hand which the former Azukage shook confidently, his colorful yet fiery promise bringing cold smirks upon the faces of the 7 ninja swordsmen's faces. 4,000 Uzumaki shall sail with you and see Tobarama Senju and his cronies themselves. He awoke with a faint gasp and sucked in as much air as possible. Strange lights danced all around him until he regained his vision and saw a dark sky floating endlessly above him. Gathering his strength, he got back on his feet only to find himself in an endless open grassland. One full of burning funeral pyres. It took him a moment to take in that sight but steeling himself, he looked at his body and couldn't remember the last thing that happened. Was it a dream? Perhaps. He tried to get out of it, but found that he couldn't despite numerous attempts, so with a frustrated sigh he started walking through the field of fire. He walked and walked in a place where time had no meaning, where the funeral pyres kept burning continuously all around him for as far as his eyes could see. For hours or days or ages he walked forward, wondering just whom these pyres had been lit to cremate. An air of everlasting sadness and grief prevailed, as he felt a sorrow like never before try to overwhelm his heart. But he had not fought 3 great wars on a weak heart. His life had been a tragedy, and even so he had fought with everything he had within him. For clan and country, for comrades and friends, for humanity. For freedom. That resolve gave him strength to keep moving forward even as he heard a million souls cry out in grief over the S burning around him. He felt their pain, their broken dreams, the despair. But Naruto Namikaze kept walking forward. He was then assaulted with the deaths of every man, woman and child burning around him. From the first to S in battle and countless more one after another. Guilty and innocent, brave and cowards, heroic and disgraceful, he watched every battle that mankind fought in an endless dance of deaths. The drops of B falling from their B became a lake in the far distance, which then grew into a river, and then an endless and horrifying sea of B. He didn't falter and started walking upon it without a flinch even as he felt the dark energy all around him, trying to drive him mad with grief and despair. The ocean roared at his defiance and a massive tsunami of B rose in the distance. He kept walking forward even as it raced to swallow him to the deepest pits of hell. Summoning his own power, he created a frightening tsunami of his own and made it clash with that S-force of nature, making B rain from the skies and drown him completely in the aftermath. When his vision cleared, Naruto found himself staring at the clouds and a pure breeze of air made him calm. He looked at his body and found it to be clean from any B that had rained down upon him before. And then he froze. Horror coursed through his heart finally when he found himself standing upon a mountain of corpses. Men, women and even children that had been killed by his own hands. He spotted the lifeless eyes of the third Raikage, his son A, Kinkaku and Ginkaku, Kakazu, Hiruzen Sarutobi, Hanzo Salamander, many daimyos alongside thousands upon thousands of shinobi and warriors from many nations alongside civilians staring back at him. Their haunting gazes condemning him. You have many, my descendant. As he heard that ancient voice, the scene changed again until he found himself standing on the shores of a zoo watching the vast familiar sea in front of him. The thought of it alone brought him peace, the older man floating beside him did not. One look at his Rinnegan eyes and he knew who the man was, for only the Sage of Six Paths had that power before Madara. I have, he replied curtly, no bravado but only a brief regret in his voice, making the older man grunt. I can see why Madara likes you. Quite direct, aren't you? Asked the sage amusedly. What is this? Asked Naruto seriously. A place that exists between life and death, not a dream. I have been here a long time, confessed the older man. Why? Cursed for a mistake that grew this suffering. Watch in horror as my sons, grandsons, and my descendants kill each other alongside countless people of this world in an endless conflict. A terrible fate, said the sage sadly. You have been waiting all this time. For 3,000 years and more, pointed Naruto, earning a grave nod from the older man. For what? He asked, knowing deep in his heart the answer to that question. Freedom. Something stirred deep within his heart upon hearing that priceless word, and the sage smiled ruefully as he looked at the expression on his face. You remind me of my dear sons. The fierce and strong Indra, and the loving but brave Ashura. The first in all this time to have be of both Uchiha and Senju in your veins. The greatness of both as well as their weakness at the same time, said the sage fondly. Why did you want to meet me? Questioned Naruto hesitantly, as the sage looked at him quite seriously. To understand you. And what is that you want to understand? Asked the blonde as he narrowed his gaze at the older monk. As to why a man as great and wise as you, someone who yearns for freedom deep inside his heart, is now hell-bent on humanity itself. At first Naruto blinked in absolute shock upon hearing that question, which was followed by a black rage as he glared at the older man furiously. I am trying to free it from the curse you inflicted on us with your foolish decisions. To bring an end to this senseless and unbearable cycle of war and death. Refuted Naruto fiercely, earning an understanding nod from the sage. Is that the vow renouncing war? he asked curiously, making Naruto nod with determination. Then you are doomed, just like I was. For humanity is a monster that can never be tamed, not even by the gods if they exist or any force in this universe including the Otsutsuki against whom you intend to unite mankind by force. My mother tried once through terror and fear, I tried through compassion and you through conquest. Mankind has always desired more than what it deserves, and they will never submit to anyone that denies their wishes be they great or terrible. They shall always rebel for it is in their be, advised the sage sadly. Much to his surprise, Naruto merely gave an understanding smile instead of being enraged further. I know that. The solution that Madara and I agreed upon is not exactly the right choice. There never was one to begin with. In time, there will become another that shall deny our vow renouncing war and seek to reverse it. Perhaps they shall succeed or even fail. I cannot say, confessed Naruto. Then why go so far? Questioned the sage, confusion evident in his eyes. Because I am free. The sage's eyes widened in shock followed by a sense of understanding dawning upon him as it proved his beliefs about humanity. We men are doomed, and yet we still fight against the inevitable with everything in our heart, because we were born in this world and freedom is our birthright. As long as there remains a single human being, our race will endure no matter what gets thrown at us. Even if it's brief and forceful, I want to show my people a future where they could actually be united and face the greatest threat marching towards them. Only when one experiences something, do they understand it truly. Humanity never got that chance. All I am trying to do is to give them one, explained Naruto with a wistful smile. Even if they hate and scorn you for it. Even if it costs you everything you hold dear. Questioned the sage in a stunned voice. My people have experienced a lot of pain and suffering, I want to give them a paradise even for a short while, something which I never got and may never get to see. The cost of peace and freedom is always priceless, and I shall pay it gladly. I see, whispered the sage somberly, his eyes becoming a little moist as he glanced at his descendant. Do not be sad, old man. This is the path we chose for ourselves and we must live with it, just like you had to with your choices, suggested Naruto in a much more comforting voice than he thought himself capable of. There is a drawback to your plan which I must warn you about, replied the sage after a moment's pause to gather himself. Which is? Asked Naruto hesitantly. If you achieve victory in this war and humanity finally is at peace, then it will lose its prowess at war that it has honed for thousands of years. Naruto's eyes widened in shock before determination once again arrived in his eyes which made the sage smile knowingly. Madara and I will not let that happen. Yes, we will bring peace but also prepare our people against the Otsutsuki, replied Naruto defiantly. I have no doubt you will. But humanity has very short memories sometimes. Visionaries like you and Madara are not born very often, much less ones who actually have the power and will to implement those reforms. With no enemies left to fight, humanity may just get too used to peace. By the time they realize that folly, it may be too late. The Otsutsuki are creatures not bound by time. They can easily wait for you and Madara to rest for you are mortal, they are not in a complicated way. You understand the value of peace for you have been at war ever since you were born, but will generations that come after children who have only known peace also understand and be able to master the art of war against such dreaded enemies in time? Asked the sage seriously. Naruto wanted to answer in defiance they could, but the honest part of his heart was uncertain. Humanity may be at peace once it was linked completely to each other through chakra and be able to understand each other, but at the same time that peace could make them complacent for there would be no more wars to fight. Until the Great One came crashing at the door. What is the alternative? Let my people squabble and s for petty feudal lords. You must realize how broken the current shinobi system is. We'll never be united or just be even weaker by the time the Otsutsuki hit us. Argued Naruto, earning a grave nod from the sage. There is no doubt it is a terrible and broken way. It will never deliver peace but only more war, but if I am being brutally honest it also gave birth to great warriors like you and Madara. Would you be so good at war if you had only known peace and fought in no conflict at all your entire life? Asked the sage seriously. No. The sage was pleased to see the boy was not delusional and had the strength to accept criticism to an extent at least. But after listening to you and watching everything that has happened ever since I made my decision, I believe that humanity deserves a chance at true peace. We never gave them that choice with our actions. It might also happen that they may actually end up preparing better against the Otsutsuki with the right leadership and true unity. It's time to give this world the freedom which was stolen, said the sage honestly. Naruto was stunned, and it must have shown clearly on his face because the sage actually chuckled. I do not totally agree with you, my descendant. And yet I must accept that you are free. He watched a genuine smile arrive on the young man's face, and for a moment he reminded the sage of his youngest son Ashura, which only made the next part more painful. There is something I must show you, said the sage hesitantly, as he offered his hand. What is it? Asked Naruto seriously, even as he gently grasped it with his own. You clearly know what defeat shall mean. Yet you must also know the cost of victory should you prevail, and make your choice accordingly, said the sage. I have won every battle, answered Naruto frankly. And yet you are losing this war. That fact made the young former Kage flinch and brought forth the deepest fear and a bitter reality he was fighting against desperately. And what the sage showed him next made him go pale with horror and tremble like never before. So many paths, so many consequences. By the time the visions ended, he had fallen to his knees, making the sage place a comforting hand upon his shoulder. Your enemies will be desperate and will use your weakness against you without hesitation. You once made a painful choice that brought an end to a war. If such a decisive moment comes again for this conflict, your choice now will affect humanity itself. Are you prepared for that? Asked the sage honestly. They will have to go through my ashes first before harming any one of my people, replied Naruto without hesitation. Loyalty is your weakness, Naruto. But it is also what sets you apart. The world remembers that. From Azu to Kiri and even to the fighters in the Land of Lightning, they remember your name and will risk everything for your sake in time. What are the Uzumaki clan's famous words? Asked the sage honestly. Family, duty, honor, answered the Azu-born fighter dutifully. They too shall hold their oath sooner or later. Now that you know the cost of freedom, are you still prepared to pay it? Your decision is the key. One that can save humanity from despair, questioned the sage, with a gaze that seemed to bore clean through his descendant's very soul itself. He watched the young man clench his fists bitterly and his shoulders slumped in defeat, making the sage disappointed a little. I'll do it. Hagoromo Otsutsuki's eyes widened upon hearing those words and on seeing the terrifying determination in his descendant's eyes when the blonde looked back at him. I'll put an end to 3,000 years of feudal history created by shinobi. The sage's eyes teared up a little even as he helped the young man rise back to his feet and looked into those eyes for a long moment. Then I hope you succeed where I and my sons failed. The only one who can save humanity now is you, Naruto Namikaze, said the sage truthfully. Naruto's eyes widened when he felt a strange green-colored energy envelop him completely. Looking back at the smiling older man made him only more confused. What is this? He asked. I will restore the vision you have lost while sharing some of my power. It is not much, but I hope it will help you fulfill your destiny. When the time comes, make the right choice or you'll end up here like me watching this endless cycle of violence happen over and over again, said the sage seriously. Naruto nodded as he vanished from the landscape, making the sage smile one last time as he glanced at the vast sea in front of him. Naruto the Great, huh? And here I imagined the little S would give me that la for giving them knowledge of ninja in the first place. Kushina Uzumaki slowly opened her eyes to find herself being gently carried outside of darkness towards a dim source of light. On the other end, she saw Nagato and Inoue waiting for her alongside Madara, who seemed to be in the middle of some jutsu. She suddenly remembered the brutal fight that she had fought in and its final moments. Her comrades were not surprised to see her panic and shake the slimy tongue of an inhuman creature that held her by the waist. Madara frowned but allowed her to be released, and the young redhead Spartan was shocked to see all her mortal wounds had been healed. But none of that mattered. Where is he? Inoue could not help but be surprised by just how popular her elder son was with women. No, surprised would be the wrong word, for what she saw in Kushina's desperate eyes was nothing but love for the man. From what Nagato had told her, there were 3 women in total that had held her son's heart. The most important being Ino Yamanaka, who was his world, a girl she wanted to meet quite earnestly now that Madara had revealed she had been brought back to life and was aiding them in this war in a secret way. She must be something else to make her son fall for her so hard. Mai Terumi was his legal spouse and a great woman and a statesman. She had met her daughter-in-law and had been impressed that Naruto had chosen well, for she was a leader in her own right. A wife fit for a cage and a better mother than Inoue had been towards her sons. And she had also heard from Nagato that the woman standing before her now was the first love of Inoue's elder son. In a perfect world, Kushina would have married Minato and started a family of their own. They had a relationship which was complicated to say the least, and Inoue had clearly seen the feelings her son had for this woman when he risked death to save her life. A loyalty the redhead before her would return without question, judging from the way she ran towards Nagato and shook him like a ragdoll for an answer. Elder brother was injured, Kushina, said Nagato sadly. Inoue felt for the girl when she saw tears arrive in her eyes upon hearing that, and it was clear she blamed herself. Her next words proved that. He shouldn't have if not for me, whispered Kushina miserably. I will take you to him, announced Madara, see into the conversation. Kushina gratefully nodded as she followed the older Uchiha through their hideout towards a cave which was being zealously guarded by a pair of Spartans led by Kasumi Uzumaki herself. Her closest female friend hugged her fiercely, an action Kushina returned with a faint smile before being allowed to enter through the wooden door. When they all entered, everyone was quite shocked to see Naruto not hanging between life and death. Instead, he looked stronger than ever and even his destroyed eyes had been restored to its former state. How? Asked Madara quickly, earning a faint smile from the blonde. I had some unexpected help. Before anyone could say anything more, Naruto was engulfed in a monstrous hug by a sobbing Kushina even as he fought to keep his balance while wrapping his arms around her. You idiot, she cursed him. You're not getting rid of me so easily, Kushina, replied Naruto happily, even as he melted in her embrace as she sobbed in relief. Madara looked at his comrade, and while on the outside he looked his normal self, it was his eyes that betrayed his true feelings, for he seemed to have aged quite a lot in this short time. It was the look of a man who had known and seen too much. What happened? Asked the Uchiha earnestly. Naruto looked at him and understood the hidden question, so he explained all that happened with great patience. To say, his comrades were shocked to hear his story would be an understatement. The Sage of Six Paths. I don't know if it had all been a dream, but my recovery says otherwise, said the blonde carefully, after a long moment. You're right. There is no other explanation, but still, whispered Inoue hesitantly. To think the sage still lingers, agreed Nagato, clearly disturbed with the revelation. I'm just glad he brought you back to us. If I had lost you, said Kushina with a trembling breath, as she looked into his calm gaze which still held the same amount of affection for her. In that moment, nobody else around them mattered as he looked into her eyes. You didn't. I'm here, Kushina. I'm with you till the end, remember. When she had calmed down considerably, he released her before looking back at his mother, and she easily saw the general inside of him come alive. Bring me up to speed on our current situation, he ordered decisively. Inoue nodded even as her son got up from his bed, making Kushina stand alongside him. There was an intense look in his eyes as he waited for her answer. So, she explained all that took place in his last battle, the enemy losses along with their own, and how the remnants of the allied shinobi forces were converging upon their hideout soon. We were about to march out and face them in an hour before you, finished Inoue, earning a nod from her elder son before he looked at his younger brother. I assume my chakra armor took a brutal beating? Questioned Naruto. It was the only thing that saved you, but it's pretty much useless now. We can't fix it, not in time, replied Nagato honestly. It cannot be helped. I agree with your strategy, mother. With one slight modification, proposed Naruto. Which is? Asked Inoue curiously. I'm going to the battlefield. He easily saw a series of emotions across every person's face upon that declaration. Madara and Inoue had expected this and looked reluctant but remained silent. Nagato looked conflicted but knew better than to disobey. Kushina was downright opposed, but his unflinching gaze made her back down eventually. This shall be the final battle. We will need to hold them off at all costs for 5 days, and for that we need every powerful fighter. Mother, you shall take up command of our special reserves, and 30,000 Zetsu to defend the Karakan Pass. I shall lead the Spartans and 20,000 Zetsu to defend Tiger Hill. Madara shall control a reserve of 30,000 here in the unfortunate event either or both of our positions are overrun, explained Naruto decisively, as those were the only 2 viable routes for any army to reach their hideout. Rest of the terrain was simply too unstable and full of natural threats which would slow down any enemy army by weeks. Overrun. Surely you must retreat back here once the enemy overwhelms you with their superior numbers and firepower, advised Madara. He might not be a strategist like Naruto, but it was the only logical choice. My mother may as a last resort, but not the forces at Tiger Hill. For if it falls, the enemy has a straight path to this base instead of a longer route that they would have to take through Karakan Pass. Both us and them are in a race against time, explained Naruto seriously. So a fight to the death and no retreat. Why does it sound familiar? Asked Nagato with an amused smile, making everyone except Naruto grimace. Surely, the massive traps you have set would be enough to buy us more time than such a drastic option, suggested Madara, knowing how the Zetsu had been laying bee traps across the two routes before the disastrous cage summit on Naruto's orders. They had prepared for such a situation. Do not underestimate the enemy's resolve or Tobirama's cunning. We will do what we can to hold them off long enough for you to finish the sealing of tailed beasts and fulfill our plan, warned Naruto seriously. It's a one-way trip then, accepted Kushina with a heavy heart, earning a solemn nod from Naruto. Most probably. For the sake of humanity's future and those we love, prepare yourselves and make your peace in the final hour before we march, commanded Naruto. The Uzumaki and their cage nodded with admirable determination, making Madara realize he was extremely lucky to have such fearless warriors on his side. I would like a word with Madara in private, announced Naruto, earning reluctant nods from the others before they exited the room, leaving the two of them alone. I assume you have not told everything you talked with the sage, guessed Madara, earning a thin smile from the blonde. I must discuss some plans for the Federation's future with you that must be implemented once this war is over, explained Naruto. Surely that could wait until we win this war, suggested Madara, earning a fierce look from the marshal. We will win, I will make sure of that. At what cost? Asked Madara hesitantly. Naruto gestured to his mind and Madara understood by activating his Mangekyo Sharingan to delve into the blonde's memories. There he saw the actual conversation with the sage without any omissions, along with the multiple future paths shown to Naruto, the secret suggestion the sage had shown in those memories to keep humanity united even after their victory. And a battle unlike anything he had ever seen before in the history of the shinobi world. It was glorious, horrifying, brutal, full of gallantry and the likes of which the bards would sing songs about for several thousand years. Battle for humanity's freedom. And then he saw a future which they had only dreamed of so far, a sight that brought him to his knees in joy but also grief. By the time the vision ended, Madara's eyes were moist as were Naruto's own, if only a little, as the younger man gave him a grim smile. I have done what was asked, and now only one thing remains, said Naruto calmly. Battle. Naruto nodded even as he went forward to pick up Muramasa, and when he turned back he saw Madara looking at him with immense pride and sorrow in his eyes. Is there any other way? Asked the Uchiha. We all have our duties, Madara. Yours is to lead and shape the future, mine and that of my men is to fight for it, answered Naruto truthfully. Is that why you didn't tell the others the whole truth of what the sage showed you? Of what has to be done for the sake of victory? What happened to Izuna? Asked Naruto, making Madara realize it was a clear hint the blonde wanted him to drop that line of questioning. So he dropped it. I have kept him sealed. I can reverse the Edo Tensei, and he would be a capable fighter in the battle. But, said Madara reluctantly, and was surprised when Naruto placed a firm hand upon his shoulder. No, he's family. We are not Tobirama, we fight our own battles, answered Naruto resolutely. I can commit him to your front. You need the extra muscle, offered Madara regardless of how much it hurt to make his brother be used like that. But Naruto shook his head. One fighter won't make that much of a difference, even if it's Izuna. If the enemy corner him and once again turn him against us somehow, he would do more harm than good. It is why I shall advise my mother to use only our regular troops and not the ones we have in reserve until absolutely necessary. It is a tactical decision as much as humane, explained Naruto patiently. You're more honorable than Tobirama, said Madara honestly, making Naruto chuckle bitterly. My bee honor is beyond repair, not after what I have done in this bee life. Besides, honor won't win us this war. We fight with the forces we have, said Naruto frankly. You know something which you are not telling anyone. Even me, replied Madara carefully. It's best that stays with me, better this way. With his armor destroyed, Naruto simply picked up a fur coat from a nearby hangar which should be barely enough to protect him in the bone-chilling snowy peaks of Tiger Hill. An amused smile came upon the blonde's lips when he saw a spare Spartan captain uniform had been kept for him. He wore it without hesitation and hidden satisfaction, placed Muramasa at the scabbard on his hip, donned the winter fur coat made of wolf pelt alongside combat boots. Finally, he picked up his kunai launcher weapon. He would have given anything to have a chakra armor, but since he couldn't, this was the best he could manage and he made his peace with it. When the marshal turned back towards Madara, there was an ironclad determination in his eyes as he offered him his right hand. "It's been an honor," said Naruto with a faint smile. Madara didn't hesitate in shaking the hand of a man who had earned his respect more than Hashirama now. He looked at the young man and couldn't help but remember how far he had come, how much pain and struggle he had endured, and would continue to. It was true, their world was cruel. Even so, they would still fight for their freedom. "The honor was mine," he replied sincerely, as he surprised Naruto by enveloping him in a firm hug. "Tobirama, you a fool for never understanding such a capable son. Only if he had been mine." Madara found himself cursing his arch-rival but knew what was done could not be changed. So he remained silent as Naruto returned the hug and he looked at the finest general he had ever seen once they parted. "I wish you good fortune in the war to come, Madara," said Naruto with a knowing smile. "I wish you the same for this one, Naruto." That brought an amused smile on the blonde's face. "I don't need luck, I have Spartans." Near the border, Mountain's graveyard. Tobirama looked at all the assembled commanders of their alliance in his tent. He knew but was still disappointed to see 2 cages missing alongside most of their sub-commanders. Looking to his right, he could clearly see Onoki looked ready to drop S considering the forced march he had made the remainders of his army to endure just to get here. Revenge was the only thing driving him and it gave the short man a dark aura. He had every right to be and inwardly Tobirama was forced to accept his son's prowess grudgingly. There was no finer commander when it came to offensive battles and Naruto had proven his worth on the field of battle. 2 cages K in single combat and most of Onoki's coalition either S, critically wounded or routed by an enemy far smaller in strength. But the enemy did have the finest fighters in the form of battle-hardened Spartans, the element of surprise, monstrous weapons of war, and a commander with nearly 2 decades of warfare experience. Barely 20,000 of Onoki's men had survived to reach their camp and the Tsuchikage was maintaining a stony silence after giving a brief report to Tobirama. One that had already been given by Hashirama, but still. "I had heard of Naruto's legend. But this is," said Shisui Uchiha with a wince. The current leader of the Uchiha clan was young after his father had S in the previous war. Having lost quite a few clansmen in the last battle, the same as the Senju, he had a right to be shocked. Not that it improved Onoki's mood any better as he glared at the young boy. "I wounded him badly, if the gods are just he won't survive," replied Onoki stubbornly, making Tobirama secretly clench his fists furiously. "The gods are cruel, Onoki. If they were just, my son. This is not a battle of the gods but men, Lord Tsuchikage. And we must not forget Madara Uchiha has the Rinnegan which has been used to bring the Spartans back to life. He would do everything in his inhuman power to restore the leader of his army for this final battle," warned Mifune of the samurai, earning nods from several other men making Onoki clench his fist bitterly. "I want his head. Too many good men and women have S at his hands," yelled Onoki furiously. Tobirama grimaced but kept his silence. The new Tsuchikage, for all his prowess as a shinobi, was still an impulsive fool. With the losses he had suffered, it would be a miracle if Iwagakure was even recognized as a great nation at the end of this war. If they won. "Tsukumo, what have your scouts reported about the enemy defenses?" asked Tobirama seriously. The Hatake clan leader's troubled look upon hearing that question didn't make Tobirama feel any better. "There are 2 paths that can make us reach the enemy's base. The longer but less difficult one is through Karakan Pass, but it is severely filled with traps of all kinds. We don't have any estimate of enemy numbers defending this area," reported Tsukumo, as he pointed the details on the hastily assembled map of these lands. "And the other one?" prompted Shikuchi Nara. "Tiger Hill. It has a pass that can lead us quickly to the enemy base where our Jinchuriki are held captive. But is a nightmare of untold proportions. The mountains are dangerous terrain with heavy advantage tilted towards the defenders at superior heights. The traps will be lesser as compared to Karakin Pass, but the weather is dangerously cold. Less than half of our army is prepared to fight in this wintry weather. We simply did not have enough time to get them the right clothing and equipment for such a campaign. Any offensive in this sector would lead to heavy losses, explained Tsukumo honestly. Estimate time of reaching via both routes to the enemy base if the enemy is subdued swiftly? Questioned Hashirama, making the others look at him warily. Some were still not used to a sight of A.S. man being brought back the way he had been, but his presence comforted them regardless, for they would need his power against such odds. 3 to 4 days via the Karakin Pass route. 1 via the pass behind Tiger Hill. Tobarama could see the gears churning on every commander's face as they took in that intel. They were in a race against time. Madara would have already completed sealing of most tailed beasts from their Jinchuriki by now. They had less than a week to rescue those who still survived, or the defeat was certain. Lord Second, what should we do? Questioned Tsukumo, bring Tobarama out of his thoughts. Madara may be leading these rebels, but your son leads its army. Even if he is incapacitated or he would have left plans for this battle. You know him better than anyone in this room, so Hokage, what shall be our plan of action? Asked Onoki, displaying his dislike over the truth of Naruto being Tobarama's son but otherwise being quite sensible in his ask. Tobarama took in a deep breath as he remembered his son's history, his battles and the possible strategy he could come up with. He had the advantage of terrain and time, but lacked sufficient troops and several capable commanders unlike the allies. The second Hokage studied the map thoroughly and a plan started to develop in his mind as he guessed what his son would do exactly. They thought alike in quite a few ways. Naruto would have divided his forces to protect both routes. He prepares for every possibility that he can think of, no matter how small the chance of it happening, he began, earning nods from every commander in the room. They may hate Naruto's guts, but none could deny he was a dangerous military commander. Tiger Hill has a restricted terrain to deploy troops in extremely large numbers. Karakin Pass, however, is a wider area to deploy more troops and even use those monstrous bombs which were used against Onoki's forces. He can't use them on Tiger Hill or risk harming his own men or collapsing the mountains protecting them, explained Tobarama, making Onoki and Hashirama wince as they recalled those weapons of mass destruction. Hashirama had been wiped out in the blast alongside all the Konoha fighters, only the Edo Tensei had brought him back. Onoki had been lucky, his men were not. He can place maximum 20,000 troops on Tiger Hill. Any more and he risks creating confusion and chaos among his own lines, even friendly fire if their chain of command collapses, pointed Shikuchi Nara accurately, earning a nod from his Hokage. I would suggest 30,000 to 50,000 fighters can be placed to defend Karakin Pass. We should go with a lower estimate, as knowing Naruto, he would have left a respectable reserve force near the base in the event any or both of the positions he is defending is overrun. I know we do not have accurate numbers of the enemy strength, but my experience tells me this should be appropriate, suggested Tobarama. We have roughly 140,000 troops if we combine all units, support and medics. Should we split our army equally to attack both fronts? Asked Mifune curiously. Tobarama shook his head, much to the samurai leader's surprise. We need to reach their base quickly and should also account for additional time to destroy the reserves stationed there before confronting Madara himself. Time is the most important element. There is no doubt about Naruto's skill in battle and command. But most of the battles he has fought have been offensive actions. In this one he shall be on the defense. The second Hokage was pleased to see a few intelligent commanders started to understand what he was hinting at. It made him confident of their ability to lead in this battle. You're right, Hokage, but I still suggest we attack on both fronts. Most of our forces will overwhelm Tiger Hill, while a smaller one will engage the defenders of Karakin Pass to keep them fixated there instead of rushing back to defend their commander's position if he is breathing, suggested Onoki, displaying surprising tact for his young age. It would seem the man had learned something at least from his enemy and his own past defeats. Before any further plans of engagement could be discussed, Shikuchi Nara asked a question that took many by surprise. Where are the 7 ninja swordsmen from Kirigakure? We were assured their support in bringing their rogue Kage to justice, pointed the Nara head shrewdly. Be missed rats. They are as devious as their former Kage, cursed Onoki. They will not come. Everyone was surprised at Tsukumo's declaration. Tobirama however gestured the veteran to go ahead, for he had served as a spy in Kiri before. He would know its fighters better than anyone in this room, including Tobirama. General Abe, the man who has assumed temporary command of their nation, promised that support. He was former commander to the dethroned daimyo, a decent military commander but one more adept at politics. For all his faults, Naruto inspires loyalty unlike anyone else. The Kirigakure troops practically worship him, and the 7 ninja swordsmen are very close to him. They will not take up arms against their former leader and comrade so easily, warned Tsukumo. Even after knowing he was a spy who fooled them all. Asked Onoki incredulously, even the dumb mist bastards would not be so foolish. Tsukumo gave him a reproachful glare. Kiri was a backwater nation before Naruto, he made it the power it is today. He was a spy, but still the finest cage that nation has ever seen. Even the B civilians adore him, for he truly improved their lives. Political creatures like Abe may pledge their support to us nominally to be safe, but he has no real command over the Kirigakure army, much less the 7 ninja swordsmen, explained Tsukumo patiently. So you think they will join against us? Asked Shikuchi Nara worriedly, for nobody in this room wanted to face an army who had never lost a single battle under Naruto's command. Not entirely, they are probably in the midst of a civil war by now, with ones loyal to Naruto and those wanting to save their nation's future after these revelations battling for dominance. But we must account for the fact that some loyal but foolish fighters may still come to defend the cage they love, including some or all members of the 7 ninja swordsmen, warned Tsukumo. Naruto left no publicly declared plans for succession, in a way that works in his favor, for there is no true military or civil authority in position to bring that nation under control in time, said Shikuchi Nara with a grimace. So, what should we do? Asked Shisui Uchiha hesitantly. We will leave a rearguard of 20,000 to protect us from any force Kiri or others trying to attack us from behind, declared Tobirama, silencing any further arguments, for he didn't need any more difficulties than they already had. We need those men at the front lines, Tobirama, growled Onoki furiously. We will not leave our rear undefended. That is my decision, whispered Tobirama icily, daring the young cage to challenge that order. Onoki looked resentful but went silent after that firm command. With that settled, Tobirama looked at the rest of the men in the room. 20,000 of our troops under Hashirama's leadership shall lead a diversionary attack on Karakan Pass. His power and that much of our force should be enough to keep the larger of the enemy defenders pinned there and not come to the aid of Naruto or whoever is leading the force at Tiger Hill. Mifune shall be second in command of this army made up of mostly samurai, and some Black Ops forces from our entire army, ordered Tobirama. Hashirama merely gave a somber nod while Mifune looked determined to succeed as he accepted the order. If required, I will teleport Hashirama back to the other front if the resistance becomes too extreme or Madara shows up, for only he can match that man's power. Again, nobody objected, for they had all seen or knew of how Madara had single-handedly destroyed Iwagakure completely in the blink of an eye. Against such a monster, only the first Hokage was capable to battle after having defeated the Uchiha once in the past. The bulk of our army 100,000 strong shall launch a full frontal attack on Tiger Hill. There will be no holding back, even some reserves I am preparing may be deployed from the start if required. While I will be the strategic commander, I want Onoki to lead the vanguard with some of his best troops, for there are no fighters better than ones from Iwagakure in our army who know how to fight in such mountainous terrain, ordered Tobirama. The Tsuchikage seemed pleased by the decision and readily nodded, even as Tobirama continued assigning commands of other battle units that would be fighting on Tiger Hill. If only the brat realized in time, this was the Hokage's way of further destroying what little military power Iwagakure and the Land of Earth had left by making them fight at the front lines. Onoki's blind thirst for revenge would be the final nail in his nation's crumbling history. Tobirama held back his anger at the young fool, for it was the conspiracy Iwagakure started and enchanted Hiruzen and the fire daimyo into that led to this war. One that would cost him his only son. He failed in protecting his child, resented him for allying with Madara, absolutely didn't agree with their plan for this world. But it didn't change the fact that Naruto was still his son. Tobirama held back his rage and regret as he could not change the past for all his power, even if they were on opposing sides. Once again a part of his heart had been pleased with the justice Naruto had delivered upon Onoki and his men. It was a traitorous thought which he kept to himself and one he would take to his grave. The only solace he would take from this entire war would be the fact that it would make Konoha and the Land of Fire as the indisputable power across the entire world. One even Kirigakure would be hard-pressed to acknowledge in time. It was the only thing he could win when he had already lost so much. As he looked at Onoki and a few others while they discussed the finer details of their attack, only one thought prevailed in the regretful Hokage's heart. I was not able to save you, my son. But I will avenge you by making the men who pushed us all into this position pay for their crimes. Madara, the Fire and Earth daimyo, Onoki, even his traitorous student Danzo who encouraged Hiruzen in this treachery would all pay for their crimes once this war was over. He would see to that, if they managed to survive this conflict. And he would ensure neither Uzushiogakure or Kirigakure were delivered any overly harsh punishments, despite the wishes of many in his ranks alongside protecting his grandchildren. It's the least I can do for everything you have done for me, Naruto. Land of Fire. Ino looked back at the burning feudal capital in the distance, or more specifically the destroyed imperial palace where the feudal lord of this land had once resided with his entire family. Now, he was nothing but ashes alongside his entire line and all the political advisors. They had not even spared minor feudal lords and their entire families who had taken refuge in the palace. Their enemy had made a logical choice in bringing their entire feudal nobility in the capital with their shinobi armies off to war on the battlefront. It was a good city to defend with strong walls and the Imperial Guard and even the Fire Daimyo's extremely skilled personal guards made up of fine shinobi and even samurai. Against any external attack, they could have held out for months easily, but what they weren't prepared for were internal threats. Specifically, the thousands of Zetsu who easily slipped into the city through the ground beneath its feet, bypassing the heavily defended Imperial Palace walls manned by the garrison. It had all gone as Naruto had dictated, and her troops had distracted the garrison by ravaging the city in sudden surprise attacks nearly everywhere, while a small elite force under her command had stealthily isolated the palace before destroying it in explosives. Every member of the daimyo's court had been in that building and they all fell when their holdfast crumbled. She had never hesitated in her actions against her former countrymen and feudal lords, for it was their selfish interests that would lead thousands of shinobi from all sides to needless deaths. They were offered a peaceful path and yet they chose violence and war. Tonight, it was returned to them in their own B. She looked beside her as a Zetsu emerged from the ground and looked at her solemnly. Our losses? She asked with a tired sigh. We lost most of our forces, reported the Zetsu. The capital was always going to be a hard fight, she consoled the creature for what little it was worth. Everywhere. She blinked as she realized the implications quite clearly. Naruto had lent her 10,000 Zetsus to eliminate the Fire and Earth Nation's daimyo alongside the ones from minor villages like Omegakure. With the shinobi armies and the samurai on the front lines, it was the perfect chance to strike the leaders on whose behest this war had taken place. While she had led the attack on the Fire Daimyo with 5,000 Zetsu, the remaining half had been split between taking out the Earth Daimyo and the remaining minor feudal lords of other nations. The force attacking the Earth Daimyo was virtually annihilated, but the target and his entire family alongside all supporters were A. So were the other minor feudal lords of remaining nations. But hardly 1,000 of us remain now, including the ones at your side right now, reported the Zetsu sadly. Words will never be able to bring back your brethren, but their S will someday help us change the future of this cruel world, said Ino honestly. Our brothers have learned that General Naruto shall be making his final stand upon Tiger Hill with the rest of our forces and the Spartans to hold off the enemy army for 5 days. His mother shall similarly defend Karakan Pass, while a reserve army shall remain at the base with Madara to ensure the objective is achieved. Less than a tenth of our total force remains from this mission, but we intend to aid our allies. Will you join us? Asked the Zetsu curiously. How many men does Naruto have? And how many shall he face? Asked Ino worriedly. His attack on the massive force led by the Tsuchikage was successful with heavy losses for us at the same time. We have destroyed half of the enemy army, but they still have nearly 140,000 fighters if you combine everyone. They also have strong reanimated shinobi like Hashirama Senju and probably others waiting in reserve, reported Zetsu hesitantly. How many does Naruto have? Questioned Ino once again, as a terrible feeling started to spread across her heart. He gave 30,000 to his mother to defend her sector with our special reserves. A similar number of Zetsu have been left at the base with Madara as a last reserve should our main armies be overrun or a surprise attack launched at our command center by the enemy. Naruto has taken the Spartans and 20,000 Zetsu with him into battle to defend the pass behind Tiger Hill. Ino froze. She had known he was going to be outnumbered, but never had she imagined such a vast difference. I have won every battle, and even so I might lose this war, Ino. She had not believed those fateful words of his during their last meeting before they parted. There was no better commander than him on the battlefield, and he was a cage-level shinobi with a good defensive position, not to mention the loyal and powerful Spartans by his side and many Zetsu. But even so, these odds were damning. If only the armies of Kirigakure and Azuchiogakure had decided to back him in his most desperate time. He shall s on Tiger Hill. She took a step back as if struck by lightning upon hearing the Zetsu's sorrowful but harsh words. They were impossible to believe or accept, but the shinobi in her could see the writing on the wall quite clearly. I could never truly stand by your side in life, Naruto. Regret and sadness weighed heavily upon her broken heart as she remembered the past, everything they had been through together and all their dreams. Zetsu was surprised when he saw a resigned yet determined look arrive in the Yamanaka Kunoichi's eyes as she looked back at him fiercely. Then we shall s fighting by his side. She saw faint admiration arrive in the creature's eyes as several of his fellows came around her, with a pair starting to wrap themselves around her in a protective manner. We can travel faster and discreetly to reach the battlefield via underground routes. We shall take you to your husband's side, promised the lead Zetsu. Ino nodded without hesitation and gave a grateful smile. I will not let you face the end alone, Naruto. This time, I am not leaving your side. Mountain's graveyard. Naruto sat upon his old summoning partner Shera as the massive wolf stood upon a nearby hill overlooking the 80,000-plus strong army assembled in the field near their command center. Not everyone would be going to the front lines as per his plan, but he had asked for them all to be present regardless. As the commander of this army, it was his duty to speak to his fighters, knowing most, including himself, would likely not live to see the dream they were fighting for. He had led men into battle against impossible odds before, inspiring them with his words and actions both. But never to certain death. Even Operation Thunderbolt with the Spartans had never seemed like a mission when they had been given the orders, only later they had realized the deception and had fulfilled the duty to their nation regardless of betrayal. But now, he could feel it in his bones that this would be his last battle. His men also knew deep in their hearts the reality that awaited them. What could he say to them that would make a true difference? Something that could change their fate, or at least ease the fear within their hearts, for he felt it too. He had given passionate speeches before, ones that inspired even the most fearful to fight with admirable bravery. But for the first time, he found himself at a lack of words, and it troubled him. Nagato, how did you inspire our Spartan brothers and sisters at Razangla? It still baffles me. Tell them the truth and speak what lies in your heart, advised Shera, the veteran Wolf Clan leader who had fought beside his side for decades. It was a wonder he had answered his summon, but Shera had just gave him a knowing look and a brief nod, which was more than enough to convey his feelings. The creature could not help but reminisce the old days when the man sitting atop his massive form had been nothing but a brat. To watch him grow and come so far had been an incredible journey, even if he never said it out loud. The Wolf Clan had been loyal summons to the Namikaze clan for countless generations. How could they not answer the summons of the trusted human partners in their final hour? No, the tree was secure, even if several branches would mostly end in the form of Naruto, Nagato and Inoue. Arime and Inoue Namikaze, the children of Naruto, they were the hope which the Terran Federation was fighting to protect. Alongside every human and sentient living being of this planet. The wolf looked at the first Terran Federation flag currently being held by Naruto proudly. It had been Madara's idea, and he could not deny it had been made well and gave its warriors something to see beyond this dream they were fighting for. The banner's background was a field of red, a true mark of their world's history. Upon it was an image of a beautiful bluish-green colored planet protected carefully among the wings of a black-colored mythical phoenix. It was truly symbolic, for the protectors of Earth would not always be remembered for the duty but from their ashes would emerge a stronger civilization and a reborn phoenix who would carry on that mantle of protecting their planet until the very end. It was shame humanity had forgotten the rule of kings, for Shera felt the one sitting upon him looked exactly like the old legends he had heard about when he had been a young pup. Before the shinobi and the Namikaze clan that followed, his wolf clan had been loyal fighting partners to the old kings of the north, which was now known as the Land of Lightning. It was fate that perhaps in humanity's final battle with itself, he had the honor of fighting beside a man who had truly united the lands once supported by Shera's ancestors. History would probably know him by many names depending upon the outcome of this war, but right now, the young man sitting atop him was the closest thing to a king of the north in the wolf's nostalgic heart. My warriors. Silence prevailed across the Terran Federation's assembled army. Even the usually talkative Zetsu was somber, which allowed their commander's voice to reach every one of them. Nagato stood to one side along with the Spartans, his mother and Reika Uzumaki, who would be acting as the second in command for the 30,000-strong Zetsu army heading to defend Karakan Pass. While he would be going with the Spartans to fight alongside his brother and 20,000 Zetsu to defend the pass of Tiger Hill. Some, including Madara, had argued that Naruto should take more Zetsu instead of leaving thousands in reserve, but the terrain was such that he could barely take this many or risk a friendly fire or chaos among his own forces in battle. He could not help but realize that this was the end, and yet he was content, for he had seen everything he had ever wanted. His brother had kept their promise. Azu would be safe as long as they won this war. The first Azukage's truth was exposed in front of their clan. The Spartans were honored by their countrymen. His brother had lived a decent life. Their family was once again united, and the Namikaze clan would go on in the form of his brother's children. He even got to read the end of his favorite manga. There was nothing more he could ask for, and he smiled when he looked at his elder brother as he called out to them from atop the giant wolf Shera. He saw the Spartans were prepared for what was coming, having already experienced death once made him fearless. Many others were not so prepared, and he didn't envy his brother's position right now, not after having been in the exact same spot during Operation Thunderbolt. How times had changed and yet remained the same. I will not lie to you, what we face is something most have never faced in all history. The might of humanity, announced Naruto resolutely. It is most likely that majority of us will not live to see this Federation flag fly high across the world. Many Zetsu looked even more crestfallen than before, but to their credit no one complained or backed away. Inoue saw the Spartans were the only ones who stood resolute in the face of such declaration, and wondered just what horrors these Uzumaki children, including her dear Nagato, had endured to become so strong-hearted. Reika Uzumaki wondered if this was what the Spartan children had experienced all those years ago. No, it had been worse, for they at least had a decent army today, whereas the Spartans had been all alone against the entire might of Kumogakure and its tailed beast. But history shall remember us, one way or another. What we stood for, what we fought for, what we bled for, and what we shall s for. Freedom. Naruto saw thousands of downcast gazes rise up on his words, and he was pleased to see so many shared his desire for that priceless right. None of us wanted to be here. Not Madara, my Uzumaki brethren, every Zetsu or myself. Yet the way of this cruel world made us who we are today, gave us less choices than we deserved in life, all for the sake of powers who didn't even know of our existence. They called us pawns, but we are soldiers. Kushina alongside every Spartan understood those words better than most, and could not help but clench their fists in stony silence. Most, including our enemies, would call what we are about to do as even foolish deaths. But it is something more. Every Zetsu felt the power radiating from their commander, but most importantly the fierce determination in his thunderous voice. It is rejection. Shera saw the army tremble upon that declaration and cast a look at his summoner, and could see why so many had called him Naruto the Great. Even in the darkest hour, even in the face of imminent death, he still had the strength to inspire those who were not even human, including the wolf himself. When Naruto looked at his fighters, there was pride and conviction in his eyes. When he spoke, there was strength and bravery that made even the most cowardly ones stand taller. We reject their chains of we reject to fight and for daimyos who have no care for lives, we reject the broken shinobi system and its The former Mizukage raised the Federation flag high in the air for all to see, even as his words were heard by every single fighter. We are not rebels without cause. We are not fighters without vision. We struggle so that someday all living beings shall be equal under this flag. We stand so that all of us and the ones who shall follow can make the choices they deny us. Is that a cause worth fighting for? Roared Naruto defiantly. Yes. Nagato's roar of acceptance joined the ones from the entire army and he felt strength flow through his heart. Is that a cause worth S4? Yes. As Naruto unleashed his prized sword Muramasa and raised it high in the air, he saw more than 80,000 warriors raise their weapons alongside him as the entire area thundered with their roars and cheers. Then come with me and end the tyranny of the shinobi system. The army roared louder than ever as their forces started dividing into their respective battle groups. Naruto saw his mother looking at him with nothing but pride in her eyes as she took her 30,000 zetsu with Reika Uzumaki right by her side. They started marching towards Karakan Pass. He saw Madara standing at the entrance of their base and giving him a final nod. Naruto acknowledged the farewell with a Spartan salute. A grim smile arrived upon his lips when he saw every Spartan arrive by his side with a column of 20,000 zetsu marching behind them dutifully. He looked at his childhood friends, Hayate, Kasumi, Kushina and his brother Nagato. His gaze continued onwards towards each and every Spartan who were his family. They had grown up together, trained together, fought side by side. It was fitting they would face the end together this time. But one he was determined to achieve on his own terms as he gave the order. To Tiger Hill. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.